Respected Kenpo Sadagje, professors, teachers, and dear students, welcome everyone. We're so glad to have you here today. That year is a classic work by Tsangyang Gyatso, the central figure of today's event. But there are many more love poems like this among his works. He was a poet, a scholar, and a spiritual practitioner. Many people see him as both mysterious and legendary. Today we are truly honored to invite a Kenpo who also comes from the snowy land of Tibet, bringing wisdom from the Tibetan Buddhist tradition to our gathering. Please welcome our very special guest, Kenpo Sodagji. He will be delivering today's keynote address. Let us welcome Kenpo Sodagje with a warm round of applause. He's here to deliver today's keynote. Please give a warm welcome to Kenpo.
Today's gathering is a very meaningful and auspicious connection. One reason is that we've all come together to explore the life of Tsangyang Gyatso, a truly extraordinary journey by any measure. Another reason is that we have scholars here from many different traditions, including Christianity and Buddhism. I think these two circumstances make today particularly special. To start, I'd like to say a few words about cross-cultural and interfaith dialogue. This kind of dialogue and exchange is genuinely needed in the world today. Professor Lee will also speak shortly about this auspicious connection. Personally, for many years now, I've had a deep interest in harmony among different religions and in learning from one another. This isn't something I say just to fit the occasion or to put on a good show for everyone. That's not the point at all. I sincerely believe that in today's globalized multicultural world, if different religions don't find common ground and instead push each other away or speak ill of one another, it harms the development of religion itself. And second, followers of different faiths each have their own deeply held beliefs, and that kind of conflict makes it harder for them to live in peace with one another. Most importantly, religions today should complement each other, learn from each other, and engage in genuine conversation. When they do, there is still so much that can be done, whether for human progress or for the broader good. That's why in recent years, including through the World Youth Buddhist Symposium, we've organized multiple seminars on religious harmony, bringing together Buddhism, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Jainism, Judaism, Confucianism, Taoism, and many other traditions. You could say there is a spirit of harmony and mutual understanding among them. When people from different faiths sit together and explore a topic from different angles, the conversation takes on a depth that's hard to reach any other way. So what we're thinking about is this. On one hand, fostering religious harmony, and on the other, how scholars without religious affiliations can also participate and think about humanity's future or the urgent questions we face right now, like our responsibilities to society and to our families. If we can have those conversations, they'd be incredibly meaningful. And more than that, I think many of the teachers and students here at Beijing Normal University today have spent years studying different religions. Some teachers in particular have devoted enormous time and energy to this kind of research. And that research isn't just research. When it's organized into written form, it becomes something essential for future generations. Today, many religious research institutes are making genuinely important contributions to this field, both now and for the future. So I especially hope that scholars from different religions and disciplines will go deep, exploring the profound meanings within each tradition. And all those precious materials are of great significance, because I think many teachers here have already done substantial research, whether in terms of their lived experience or academic background. The results are well worth preserving and studying. Once those findings are written down and organized, even though each of our lives is impermanent, if something is left behind in this world, it becomes a great gift to future researchers and students. That's the first thing I wanted to say. Now, the second thing is today's topic, Tsangyang Gyatso, approached through the lens of literary phenomena. Speaking of Tsangyang Gyatso from that angle, I find this topic both familiar and in some ways still quite new to me. because as you all know, ever since ancient times, the way people have studied and evaluated Tsangyang Gyatso has never been simple or uniform. People within religious circles tend to read Tsangyang Gyatso through a spiritual lens, interpreting him from within their tradition. They approach his ideas from a religious point of view. Then there are people in the wider world, including poetry lovers and history enthusiasts, each with their own distinct take. Personally, I think for many people today, the image of Tsangyang Gyatso they carry in their minds is more of a cultural or artistic figure. That's my own sense of it. But the real historical person who lived over 300 years ago may be quite different from what people imagine today. As we all know, historical figures and the characters we find in literature and art can be very different. Think of Journey to the West, for example, and the character of Tang Seng. You all know the Tang Seng from Journey to the West. He comes across as a bit simple and without Sun Wukong's wisdom to guide the way. He's portrayed as a rather clueless monk, kind-hearted and disciplined, but not the sharpest. But if you read Xuanzang's actual Great Tang records on the Western regions, the historical figure looks very different from the Tang Seng everyone talks about. I've read those records myself, and there's a certain quality to them, a real sense of Xuanzang describing the actual world of the Western regions as he saw it. Later, novelists drew on that material to craft a long, epic novel, a work of literary imagination. The Tang Seng most of us know isn't the real historical Xuanzang at all. There's a big gap between them. I think it's the same with Tsangyang Gyatso. Whether you look at his poetry or his love stories, Chinese translations had actually been available since the 1970s and 80s. That's when people started encountering his work. But what really brought him to wider attention was a few years back when a few lines appeared in the TV show, If You Are the One. Lines like, whether you see me or not, I'm right there. Or phrases like, that year, that month, that day. Those kinds of lines, they brought Tsangyang Gyatso back into the public spotlight. But if you actually dig in, really study and look through the historical records, you'd find that some of those lines were never written by Tsangyang Gyatso at all. He probably never even thought of them, and yet we've labeled them as his poems. Many scholars have since acknowledged they were not his work. But then some writers came forward once Tsangyang Gyatso's poems became famous and said, actually that poem wasn't written by Tsangyang Gyatso, I wrote it. Some people did step up and say so, but when they did, most readers honestly didn't care. As long as it moves you, as long as it speaks to your heart, whether it was actually written by Tsangyang Gyatso doesn't really matter to them. As long as it does something good for you, as long as it fits where you are in life and feels right, then to you it is Tsangyang Gyatso. So I think our era is a bit unusual in that way. How so? In literature and art, people today aren't particularly concerned with what's real and what's not. As long as people can connect with it, or if it touches and moves them, that's what matters. That's what they're after. So when it comes to Tsangyang Gyatso himself, history has never told a single consistent story about him. He lived over 300 years ago. You could call him a political figure, or a religious figure, or a celebrated poet. That much everyone can agree on. But when it comes to the details of his life, there are many competing accounts. You probably know this too. Under the complex historical circumstances between Tibet and the Mongols at the time, there are many different versions of his biography. Many historical sources believe that when he was around 15 years old, there was an official named Dechin Sangye Gyatso. The fifth Dalai Lama, who was Tsangyang Gyatso's predecessor, had already passed away, and for 15 years afterward, the news of his passing was kept hidden. Because of the sensitive political climate at the time, Dechin Sangye Gyatso did not dare to reveal it. Eventually, at the age of 15, Tsangyang Gyatso was formally recognized as the sixth Dalai Lama and underwent the enthronement ceremony. At the enthronement ceremony, Emperor Kangxi was reportedly very displeased since the truth had been concealed for so long. After Tsangyang Gyatso had him enthroned, the religious and political landscape at the time was extremely complicated. He then lived in the Potala Palace only from age 15 into his early 20s. Most historical accounts say he passed away at 24, somewhere in Qinghai. Among the successive lineages of the Dalai Lamas, some passed away at 11, some in their 20s, some at 18. The ages vary widely. In his case, it's commonly said he passed away at 24. Many historical records say the same. In other words, he departed from this world in 1706. There is also another account in historical records. Due to the special historical circumstances at the time, he had no choice but to remain hidden. Starting at 24, he began wandering through places like Sichuan, Tibet, and Mount Wutai in the Han lands, among others. He eventually settled in Alashan, Inner Mongolia, at what is now called the Southern Monastery, where he lived in hiding for over 30 years. In total, he lived to 64. For most of his later life, very few people knew anything about him. So in the historical records we have today, it says he only lived to 24. Some dynastic texts say the same, but in fact there are various accounts and different interpretations of the matter. I've actually visited a place about 30 kilometers from Yinchuan, once called Guangzong Temple, also known as the Southern Monastery. There at the Southern Monastery stands a stupa dedicated to the sixth Dalai Lama. It's said that he passed away there. Of course, there's no definitive historical confirmation. Whatever the actual length of his life, the songs he left behind are remarkable. Many people today see Tsangyang Gyatso as a deeply unique Tibetan Lama, one who was fully capable of love and human feeling. And what draws people's attention? What is it they're fascinated by? Not his political life and not the complex historical circumstances of his time. Many people believe that by the standards of Tibetan Buddhism, as a monk, he was willing to give up everything for love, even to leave the Potala Palace, sacrificing everything for the person he loved. Many people find that spirit incredibly noble. That's why whenever people mention Tsangyang Gyatso today, the image that comes to mind isn't complicated. They see someone with an extraordinary identity, someone willing to pay any price to give everything for the one he loved. That's what captivates so many people now. And precisely because of this, there are those who have reworked and reshaped Tsangyang Gyatso's true identity, because you can see clearly today, whether in the marketplace, in films, on television, or across various academic fields, the so-called love songs of Tsangyang Gyatso are quite far from their original meaning. What we now call Tsangyang Gyatso's love songs in the original Tibetan weren't called love songs at all. They were called spiritual songs, or songs expressing realization. Within that collection, yes, some pieces do touch on love from that era, but the great majority were written in a very particular context, one where he couldn't speak freely about many things. So he used symbolic language. And from a spiritual perspective, that language carries a profound meaning. For instance, he once wrote, "A bright moon rises over the eastern mountain. The face of one who is not my mother, yet is like a mother to me, gradually appears within my heart." What this really means is, whenever he saw the moon rise over the eastern mountain, he would think of someone who wasn't his biological mother, yet like a mother to him, and that face would come to him again and again. On the surface, it looks like longing for someone, but in reality, as I mentioned, it was Dechin Tsangyang Gyatso, the man who had raised and guided him from childhood, who had searched tirelessly and ultimately arranged for him to study texts, learn to chant, and take his vows. So much was arranged by this one person. Whenever he thought of this official, he couldn't easily say so directly. The eastern mountain in the poem refers to Lhasa. whenever the moon rose over Lhasa, in his heart, it wasn't his birth mother he thought of. It was Dechin Tsangyang Gyatso, who was like a mother to him. He missed him deeply. And that's what he expressed through poetry. There's another line of his that goes like this. What this means is, when he lived in the Potala Palace, he was called Renseng Tsangyang Gyatso. When he wandered the busy streets of Lhasa, he was known as the vagabond Dangzang Wangpo. In other words, when he resided in the grand halls of the Potala Palace, he held a very different status. Many people throughout the region regarded him as the great sixth Dalai Lama of the vast and majestic snowy land. But when he wandered through the busy city streets, people viewed him with deep disdain and called him by other names. But in fact, from the specific perspective of traditional Buddhist doctrine, what it truly meant to convey was that when you recognize the true nature of your mind within the palace of luminosity, you are the sovereign and greatest king of the fully awakened and luminous mind. But when you drift along the winding and chaotic streets of discursive thoughts, absolutely no one recognizes you for who you truly are. At that moment, you are merely the wanderer of conceptual thoughts, or the wandering consciousness itself. In other words, regarding your own mind, when you recognize it, you are just like the sixth Dalai Lama, great and extraordinary. When you don't recognize it, even though it is still him, it is just like some drifters quietly wandering the streets and absolutely no one recognizes who they are. There is also a verse about this from the perspective of self-nature, but others simply can't see it. And a great many people often wonder, during those days in the Potala Palace, what was his life really like? When he was on the street, what did he do for the one he loved, and so on. So, when a great number of different people translate this, they also frequently use distinctive and quite unique language to describe it. There is also a very famous and widely recognized line of classical poetry. In his very last spiritual songs of realization, there are around 60 or so. As for his spiritual songs of realization, most researchers today generally agree that about 60 were composed by him personally. Others attribute more than 100 works to him, some claim 200 or 300, and some even suggest over 1,000. But most of these were composed by later generations and attributed to him. So it seems that later generations are very talented at writing poetry. And it's not just people from back then. Even now you see things like Ma Yun said this, or so-and-so said that, when they never actually said anything of the sort. We love taking lines we like and putting someone else's name on them. It happens with me too. There are things I've never said, and yet people post them online saying, Kenpo said this. Sometimes I see it and think, I never even had that thought. Why would someone put my name on it? But people do as they wish, and there is little one can do about it. When everyone behaves this way, especially in today's internet age, with 4G and soon 5G networks, countless pieces of information can spread in a very short time, and no one can really control it. There was one verse, his very last verse. Do you know what it says? "O white crane, lend me your wings. I won't fly to some distant place, just a brief journey to Litang and back." Many of you have probably heard this before. When this verse first appeared, no one really understood what it meant. "O white crane, lend me your wings." But later, when the seventh Dalai Lama was reborn in Litang, people finally understood. His next incarnation would not appear in a distant place. He would simply be reborn in Litang, because the sixth Dalai Lama's next incarnation appeared there, and the seventh Dalai Lama came from Litang. It was only then that everyone realized the hidden meaning behind those words, and it suddenly became clear. So I think for many of us, when we try to understand the story of Tsangyang Gyatso, we should look at the real person and what actually happened. That matters. There is a biography of him. The author was named Ngawang Lozang Tashi, someone from the Alashan region. He wrote about him roughly 40 or 50 years after his passing. It was originally written in Tibetan. Some people call it the biography of the sixth Dalai Lama, while others call it the secret biography of the sixth Dalai Lama. It has different names, but this one is considered fairly reliable. Over time, more accounts of his life emerged, including some in Chinese. So when we look at the transmission and attribution of his writings, it's genuinely hard to determine which poems truly belong to Tsangyang Gyatso. Many people write verses they love and then attach his name to them, but really those aren't by Tsangyang Gyatso, they're by you. It would be much better to just put your own name on them, but what's really driving this today? It's consumerism. So many people are turning culture into something vulgar and superficial. That's become a very widespread phenomenon. Culture was originally meant to uplift people through literature, to refine and beautify the goodness and inner beauty in people's character. That's what it was for. But today, many people can't engage with anything deeper or more profound. They simply can't access it. And so literature gets used to distort and degrade instead. This is a serious problem. There are a few traits of this kind of vulgarity in our time. The first is impatience and superficiality. People today often lack the depth of specialized knowledge, and they don't have the patience to quietly dig into a subject for years. It's unlike scholars of the past, or some Western scholars today, who will spend 10 or 20 years in deep contemplation and dedicated study of a single field. Without that, people just describe things through the lens of their own preferences and passing feelings. That's what restlessness looks like. Another is vulgar parody and distortion. What does that mean? When people encounter something profound that they can't accept, they go online or find other ways to drag it down and make it cheap. They attack it, slander it, tear it apart with all kinds of words. In doing so, they pull down what was once a lofty and profound realm. That's how it works. Another problem is falsification. Nowadays, when it comes to certain ancient, mysterious, deep or pure cultural traditions, people can't understand them, can't relate to them, can't take them in. And when that happens, they tend to mix things in, like what we mentioned earlier with Journey to the West. Some modern Western novels also contain similar tendencies. Long ago, Cao Shuijin wrote in Dream of the Red Chamber, when the false becomes true, the true becomes false. Once the false is treated as real, the real gets turned into something false as well. So in this age, things are shifting. So much is fabricated, so much is made up, and this is only getting worse. It's the same with poetry, with literature. And there's one more thing, a kind of rejection. Some of the finest ancient and profound cultural traditions are dismissed and pushed away by many people. They think it's harmful to the mind or to morality. But in reality, these are things that are deeply beneficial to our character, our hearts, our society. We just can't receive them. Tendencies like these are becoming more and more serious. And at a time like this, I think some of the deeper and more mysterious teachings within Tsangyang Gyatso are truly worth exploring. And in exploring him, many people come to know him through different paths. I also hope that through Tsangyang Gyatso, whether what they encounter is historically accurate or not, as long as it brings some joy to the heart, and many young people do find his words beautiful and romantic and feel that they truly speak to something inside them, in some ways that's real and valid. Tsangyang Gyatso, shaped by his unique circumstances and his unusual place in life, did produce poetry with a deeply human quality, full of beautiful and moving language. That's also part of why so many people are drawn to him today. Whatever the case may be, Tsangyang Gyatso's true identity is that of a deeply realized practitioner with profound spiritual attainment, someone who was also said to have given indications about the future. But this fuller picture of who he was isn't always easy for people to grasp. So if we want to truly understand him, we can't just look at one dimension, only his love songs or his love stories. If that's all we take in, we're missing so much. There's his talent, his unique historical position at the time, his political choices, and the depth of his thinking. All of it runs very deep. Of course, coming to know this extraordinary Lama from 300 years ago through his love songs is also a perfectly valid way in. That's all I have to share. Thank you.